Hello everybody, it's Foo here, and today I've got another overlooked buff video for you. As Sword and Shield release date is approaching, we're actually kind of running out of Pokemon with significant buffs to talk about in Generation 7, but we've got a good one today. We've landed on Lunatone. It's got some really interesting buffs that I can't wait to talk about, and I'll let you decide whether these buffs are one small step for Lunatone's viability, or whether they're one giant leap for Lunatone kind. Before we get into the video, if you enjoy this kind of content, please consider leaving a like because it really helps promote my channel and lets me know what you want to see more of, but if not, that's fine. So Lunatone was introduced in Generation 3 with the Rock Psychic typing. I love its design, I think it's so cool, really original, and I just absolutely loved this Pokemon when it was first released. That Rock Psychic typing is pretty unique between it and Solrock, which is really interesting. It's got loads of weaknesses, which isn't ideal, but it does have some good resistances too, because it's got that rock typing, it's got some normal and flying type resistances. Psychic is quite a good offensive type as well, so it's an interesting combination. Looking at its stats, it doesn't have any standout stats. Its highest stat is its special attack stat, which is okay, definitely usable, but not the highest. Its bulk isn't massive, especially its physical bulk is kind of lackluster. Its special bulk isn't too bad. But what's interesting about this Pokemon is its middling speed. Speed is at base 70, because it puts it in a category that most rock types don't fall into. Most rock types are really defensive, but with that slow speed stat, whereas Lunatone is faster than them and has a high special attack stat rather than attack stat. So it's definitely different to most rock types, which is pretty cool. It does also have the levitate ability, which is really useful for a rock type, turning a weakness into an immunity. Very, very helpful for Lunatone. It does already have quite a lot of weaknesses, so having an immunity there is very helpful. And actually, because it has that normal type resistance and rock type immunity, that's a pretty good combination, because some Pokemon use those types as their coverage, so really useful for Lunatone to have. Before Generation 7, this Pokemon really wasn't used very much. It is a stealth rocker, but it didn't see too much usage even in the lower tiers, and it also gets a number of setup moves, so it could potentially be used as an offensive Pokemon, but really you didn't see it used much at all. So what about Generation 7? What are these buffs that Lunatone has received? The first and one of the most notable ones is that Lunatone received a stat buff. He gained 20 base HP points, which is amazing, going from 70 to 90. 70 is kind of middling to low base HP. 90 is kind of on the high side in terms of HP, so that's really, really good. Means that it can definitely take a lot of special hits, and actually it takes physical hits a lot better too, so that's really so good for Lunatone for a number of sets really. If it's going to be your stealth rocker, it wants to be able to survive certain hits so that it lasts long enough to keep your stealth rock on the field, so it's good for those kind of sets. It's also good for sets where you're trying to resist things. As I mentioned, its unique typing is pretty good at resisting normal type attacks, flying type attacks, but especially fire type attacks for this Pokemon, because it does have that good special defense combined with this raised HP. Most fire types are firing off things like Fire Blast. You can take them really, really well. And I mentioned that it gets setup moves, so if you're running a Lunatone with Rock Polish or Calm Mind, you're definitely going to benefit from that HP boost too, because it just means you're much more likely to survive long enough to get your setup move off. So all in all, that HP buff is pretty huge for Lunatone. It really helps out a lot. It means that it's way more bulky. It means that it's more versatile. You can invest in HP if you want. You can make it a fully invested wall if you want, because it does actually get reliable recovery. It's very hard to get a Lunatone with reliable recovery, because it was actually only available in Generation 5 and Black and White through the Dream World. You can't get that anymore, but if you happen to have got one at the time, then Lunatone does actually have access to Moonlight, which is a very good recovery move. It's got low PP, but it's reliable and you can click it all the time. It does get Pain Split other than that, which is slightly less reliable, but still can give you some recovery. But Moonlight is really good, so this Pokemon can actually tank hits so much better. It's got reliable recovery, so it's a much more reliable stealth rocker than it used to be. It can be a check to certain types. The HP buff is really huge for this Pokemon. The second buff that it got is probably equally as important for Lunatone, and that is access to Power Gem. Prior to this generation, Lunatone really didn't have a good rock type move. that it could use. Power Gem is a powerful special rock type move with 100% accuracy, and it's just so easy to spam. It's probably its best offensive move now, I would go as far to say, because nothing is immune to the rock type, so it's so easy just to click and spam. Really good move for it to have. It can do quite a bit of damage with its base 95 special attack stat, and with access to Calm Mind you can boost that damage even further, so that's really good. I mentioned before how it's a really nice check to fire types now that it can switch in on them a lot easier with the HP buff. Well, you couldn't really threaten them too much before. Lunatone does get good coverage, and Earth Power was one of those coverage moves, which is obviously something you could try to hit fire types with, but if they're something like a Charizard or a Talonflame, you're not going to be doing anything with Earth Power. So it's nice to have the Power Gem because it's much more powerful than Earth Power due to same type attack bonus, but also it's hitting those fire flying types, which is very good too. And actually, when you combine Power Gem with Earth Power, you've got incredible coverage as it is, because rock and ground coverage is great. You think Edgequake but special. That's what you've got here, and so it's really good. Lunatone has tons more coverage as well. It gets things like, obviously it's psychic type coverage, but it gets Ice Beam, it gets Grass Knot, it gets Shadow Ball, so it's got a massive array of really interesting coverage moves, and you can definitely make an offensive set with this Pokemon work a lot better, but being able to threaten the fire types is really great too. The third buff that I want to talk about is Lunatone's new access to Ally Switch. One of the most memorable appearances of Lunatone in the series is in Tate and Liza's gym in Generation 3, the Psychic type gym, when they use Lunatone and Solrock together. They're a tag team in a doubles battle, and they really support each other. Now, Lunatone gets another supporting move for doubles battles in Ally Switch, where it swaps places with its ally, and it really confuses the opponent. It means they don't know which slot to attack, and you can really use it to your advantage with your opponent basically attacking the wrong Pokemon and not doing very much damage. So that's really helpful for it to get, along with its already great utility moves, things like Icy Wind and Trick Room for speed control, and it also has Helping Hand, for example, as well as all those coverage moves that I've already mentioned if you want to deal some damage with it. So it is slightly better in the doubles format. It's still definitely not the best Pokemon there, but being immune to Earthquake is kind of handy. You can have an Earthquaker stand next to Lunatone and fire off those powerful hits, but I do think it's definitely better now that it gets Ally Switch. The fourth and final buff I'm going to talk about is Z moves. I've seen people still kind of upset that I talk about this because obviously everything gets access to Z moves, but I always talk about it just because I want to highlight the Z moves that these different Pokemon can use well, because they're really important for each separate Pokemon differently. They don't all affect Pokemon the same way. Like, every Pokemon is unique in the way that it was buffed with Z moves. That's why I talk about them, and it's also a good way to talk about sets that utilize these Z moves, because it kind of synthesizes all the other buffs that I talk about. So for Lunatone, there are two good things about Z moves. Obviously, the offensive Z moves work quite well because Lunatone does, its highest stat is its special attack stat, so firing off these powerful Z moves is very helpful. Particularly of note is that it can go for Psyshock. Psyshock is a nice psychic type attack, good base power. Though it uses your special attack stat, it hits opponents on the physical defensive side, so it's better for breaking through their special walls. The issue comes when your opponent has a physical wall and you're not doing as much damage with your Psyshocks. If you use a Psychium Z to turn Psyshock into a Shattered Psyche, it uses your special attack stat, and it also hits the opponent on the special side, so it doesn't have that same effect as Psyshock when you turn it into the Z-move version. So that's a really neat way of being able to have a psychic type move that can hit either the physical or the special side depending on how you want to use it. So that's a really good Z-move for Lunatone to use. It also has incredible coverage, so obviously Z-moves are definitely going to be a good option for Lunatone to use if you want to have some good coverage for specific threats. You can have powerful Continental Crushes, Tectonic Rages, Sub-Zero Slammers, Bloom Dooms, and many more. This Pokemon has a really interesting coverage move pool, and so with all the setup moves, you're actually able to nuke past things that the opponent may think are safe switch-ins, so that's really cool. The other side of the coin is that this Pokemon does get status moves that are useful. In fact, probably only one of note, because it does have a lot of good setup moves already, and status moves generally boost stats, so if you already boost stats quite well, you don't necessarily need status Z moves. But even with good boosting moves, Lunatone can use Z heal block pretty well. What this does is it boosts its special attack by 2 stages in 1 turn. So it does get Calm Mind, which boosts special attack, but obviously that only gives you +1 special attack. And so if you want a more significant boost in only 1 setup turn, this Z move is the way to do it. It also will have the natural effect of heal block, stopping the opponent from any kind of healing. That's not just healing moves like Recover and Roost, but also anything like items like leftovers or berries. Heal block is, I think, quite an underrated move in general, because it basically blanket stops stall teams from doing what they want to do. They can't heal up, but you can break past stall better. So getting that +2 special attack and stopping the opponent from stalling out all your moves, that's a pretty powerful Z move to be able to use. What's also cool about Z heal block is it uses the Psychium Z. So if you've got Psyshock on the same set as that, you can always decide whether you want to go for the Z heal block, or actually if it's more value just to go for the Shattered Psyche as a powerful nuke. And that makes a really nice synergized set. You've got the extra bulk to be able to set up more easily with the Z heal block. You can run Power Gem on the same set to get some nice stab on those Power Gems. And you can run Psyshock as well because it's a good offensive Z move there too. So it really brings everything together. I didn't even talk about the fact that it has Moonblast, which is great fairy coverage, dark types. There's so much about this Pokemon that's really cool, and I'm so glad that Lunatone is a lot better now. I still think that it could use with a little bit of a special attack boost. I think this Pokemon seems like it should be doing a bit more damage than it does, but with the Life Orb and with Calm Mind, it can output quite a bit of damage. With a Rock Polish, you can even get some sweeps if you're lucky. But who knows, maybe in Sword and Shield we'll see a coveted special attack boost there, and there's not long to wait now. But that's going to be all from me today. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, and if you really enjoyed it, or if you want to see more of my content, then think about subscribing to the channel and dinging the notification bell. That's going to be all from me for now. I've been Foo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.